Welcome back to the channel. How's everybody doing? Today we're going to be talking about autopilot versus navigate on autopilot and what I use, what I prefer, and why. Let me go get myself a cup of coffee and then, yeah, we'll get right into it. I needed my coffee today. All right, so let's talk a little bit about autopilot. First of all, autopilot and navigate on autopilot, the biggest difference between the two of them is with navigate on autopilot, you basically enter your destination and your car is going to take the off ramps, change lanes, so forth and so on. And currently, I am a huge fan of autopilot. I've made quite a bit of videos when it comes to this, but there are some key things that I'm not crazy about, and that's what we're going to be talking about overall. So there's positives to both, but what do I use more? I actually use autopilot a heck of a lot more than I use navigate on autopilot, and there are reasons for this. There's some key reasons why I think I talked to a few people and they actually seem to like autopilot a lot more than navigate on autopilot. But even autopilot seems to have a little bit of a trouble recently. All right, so why do I choose autopilot and kind of take off the option for navigate on autopilot? I think with Tesla, because it's consistently going forward, moving forward, and they're making little changes here and there, there's things get tweaked. When I would say back a few months, I really didn't mind navigate on autopilot as much. It definitely worked, I would say, about 60% of the time quite decently. And I think on a nice open road, it works perfectly. But then again, so does autopilot. But with navigate on autopilot, one of the key things I noticed is if you have the options enabled, it's kind of pointless. And the key reason for it being pointless is because even though I have my hand on the wheel and I keep one hand on the wheel all the time, if it wants to change lanes, I do have to give it a little bit of a tug. So it kind of defeats the purpose. Whereas if I am strictly just on autopilot, I let the car go, put autopilot on, the car will steer, go around corners, blah, blah, blah. And it will just follow the road and slow down, maintain a pace, speed up, so forth and so on. And it's one of the beautiful, beautiful things about autopilot. It's very relaxing. But on the same note, if I just want to change lanes, I'll just, click on the stalk and bam, it changes lanes. And very carefully, very well, and right now, recently, very, very quickly. This is a very big deal because it kind of responds still to what you want. So I think autopilot is more of a hybrid system compared to, let's say, navigate on autopilot, which is more automated system. And you can feel that too. I love the aspect of autopilot simply because I still maintain a level of control for what the car does. And with that said, it makes it interesting because if I want to change lanes, I just simply, again, click on a stalk and say I want to take a left. And the car does everything else and just changes lanes and goes forward, and that's it. With navigate on autopilot, one of the biggest complaints I have is I find that it's more work. Despite the fact that it's supposed to be kind of the opposite thing, it's more automated. So it's supposed to be more intuitive. It's supposed to do things on its own, which is kind of something I'm not getting. I'm getting the opposite side of that. And with navigate, I just find that you do have to work harder to, well, you might as well just be driving at that point. I don't see it, not yet anyway. And so I use autopilot almost exclusively. Now, the thing with autopilot is it's the least amount of work on a trip. Really good examples of this is taking, let's say, a 100, 200 kilometer trip, and I'm just going down. Even when I was going from, Vancouver to Seattle, for example, it's one of those great things where, and this is Vancouver, BC, by the way, Canada. So we're heading down to Seattle, and I get on a highway, I do minimal interference. I get on a highway, I put autopilot on, and it just goes. And it doesn't change lanes. It slows down if there's a car ahead of me. But if I wanted to change lanes and go around that, it's a simple process. I push the button and push the stalk, goes around the car. I push the stalk again, I get back in my lane. And that's it. That's all there is. I don't have to worry about everything else. If somebody's pulling up in front of me, the car will take care of it. And so Autopilot is very, very intuitive, but the big difference is it doesn't kind of make the certain decisions for me. Now, I did a similar trip with where I went to Hope, for example. It's not a big deal. It's like a 2-hour drive. It's a great drive, but I use Navigate on Autopilot, and there are key things that it wants to do. It wants to change lanes, to go around slower moving vehicles, but then it maintains and stays on that lane. It stays on the far left lane, which, is a passing lane. It does not go back to to the right lane, and that one drives me nuts. So basically what I'm doing now is I'm telling the car to go back, but then almost within minutes, more often than not, it wants to go back into the center lane or into the far left lane, which is, again, kind of annoying, but it is what it is type of thing, right? And so I consistently find myself working harder on Navigate on Autopilot than I do with Autopilot. And like I said, I've made multiple videos on this channel in regards to just Autopilot and how well it works. It works very, very well 95% of the time. But Navigate on Autopilot, I think, works very, very well about 60% of the time. And that's truly my opinion, because it wants to do things that are not necessary. And the other thing too is with Navigate on Autopilot, you kind of start becoming more complacent. I sit back a little bit more and I kind of figure out the car is going to do things. It takes too much time sometimes changing lanes when it really doesn't need to. You're going, let's say, a couple of miles down the road. If you stay on this on the right lane, you're perfectly fine. You're only going to save about maybe 5 seconds if you switch over and go around one car. So you don't have to go around that car. You can just stay behind that car and take the exit. Whereas Navigate on Autopilot will do kind of the opposite. It's going to try and go around the car, and then it can't switch back, and then you have to take over. I believe it's a great system. It's just not it's not tuned enough yet. It's not at that point where it makes it comfortable enough to use. I know some of you may very well disagree with me saying that, and if you do, you're more than welcome to leave it in the comments. I am not here to discredit something. I actually look, I love these cars, and I love what Tesla's doing with this whole thing, FSD. I'll have a video coming up shortly with regards to the whole FSD thing, but when it comes down to it, I think for me, definitely Autopilot is a big one. Autopilot is still one of my favorite things to use. It was since it came out. I'm sticking with it because it just makes my drive very, very comfortable. On that same note, I think it's worth talking about just a little bit. With regards to Autopilot and Navigate on Autopilot, it doesn't really matter. I noticed on the last few updates, what it does is it actually avoids, it kind of moves over a little bit to the left or to the right, depending on which side you have a bigger truck. So let's say like a semi on your right, even though you're in your lane, what the Autopilot will do is, if there's a semi right here and you're coming up, it kind of moves over. And it's really weird because then it kind of goes back into, back in the center, but then it starts causing this weird motion. You're going a little bit to the left, and then back to the center, but it doesn't quite go back to the center. It goes past the center and then it comes back to the center. And it does this for bigger pickup trucks and semis, buses, stuff like this. Frankly, it's annoying. It's really, really annoying. If I see there's a lot of trucks around and stuff like that, more often, believe it or not, I'll take off my Autopilot. I'll just drive. It's annoying because it gives you almost like this motion sickness feeling. It's really, really weird. There's nothing wrong. The car should just stay in the center. There's no reason for it to move a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right, depending on where there's a truck. Now, the interesting part, and I wasn't recording that this one day, but I had a semi I was coming up onto a semi. They were on the right lane. I was in the center lane. So there was a semi on the right lane. So it swayed over to to the left a little bit, and almost immediately there was a big bus like one of those school buses on the right on my left lane. So basically my car started weaving like within my lane, but it kept going like this, trying to balance out, there's a truck here, there's a truck here, and now it wants to go back to the center once it passed it. And honestly, it gives you like a motion sickness feeling. It just keeps doing that. And I was thinking, I was with my wife, and I'm telling my wife, I wonder what everybody behind me thinks, because here's this Tesla that's literally going from side to side in the lane. It looks like a drunk driver. I think that's something that Tesla needs to kind of figure out. Honestly, if I would have had a police officer behind me or highway patrol, I am 100% sure they would have pulled me over for that, because I'm swaying in my lane way too much. I'm going from one side of the lane to the other. It's not like I'm staying center. So I'm not sure why Tesla did this. This is kind of I think it's a damper on autopilot. I think just keeping the car dead center is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Having the car consistently make these adjustments, you could run into problems. Anyway, that's what I got. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, consider subscribing. I talk about Teslas and my personal experiences and what I see is out there. Sometimes I give my opinions, sometimes I give actual facts, so it all depends on what the topic at hand is. That's it. That's what I have for you guys today. Till the next video, please everybody drive safe, and remember, if you're playing around with Summons, I know it's a lot of fun, but play with Summons carefully. Be cautious about it. And that's about it. Thank you very much for watching. Till next time. Goodbye.